To be fair, rock stars are usually seen playing massive live shows for thousands of fans and partying hard. There are times when business and pleasure overlap, leading to an always interesting but sometimes musically questionable live performance. Welcome to the always interesting, sometimes controversial live performances of our favorite rock stars. Number 20, Slash of Guns N' Roses at the Ritz, May 16th, 1991. We'll begin with the guitar god himself, Slash, at New York City's iconic The Ritz. It's like this. Everyone is buzzing with anticipation as Slash strums the opening chords of Welcome to the Jungle. But hold on, it's in a completely different key. Now, we've all played Guitar Hero and we know that's not how it goes, Slash. And that's not all. The chaos continues when Slash, perhaps in his own world of musical brilliance, messes up the intro to Sweet Child O' Mine. But hey, we can forgive a few hiccups, right? It's rock and roll after all. Now, fast forward to 2017, and Guns N' Roses embarks on their Not in This Lifetime tour. The name turns out to be eerily fitting. Slash, in the midst of his rock star lifestyle, faced a harrowing moment when his heart decided to take an 8-minute hiatus after one of his multiple heroin overdoses. Bassist Duff McKagan wasn't one to be left out of the party. He indulged in some serious liquid courage, downing so much alcohol that his pancreas burst. And let's not forget the man in charge, the one and only Axl Rose. Known for his notorious erratic behavior, Axl made a habit of starting shows fashionably late and stirring up some internal band strife. Yet, despite all the dysfunction, it's nothing short of a miracle that Guns N' Roses not only survived, but thrived on their tour. Shows lasting as long as 3 hours and starting on time? Now that's a comeback worth celebrating. Number 19, David Lee Roth of Van Halen at Oakland Alameda County Coliseum, May 29th, 1983. Let's jump back to the 80s, where Van Halen, the hard-drinking, hard-rocking band, takes the stage at the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum. And leading the charge is none other than the consummate frontman and living cartoon character, David Lee Roth. Now, when you're headlining Rock Day at the 1983 US Festival, you know you're in for something epic. They had no idea they were about to witness a rock and roll show of a different kind. The band rolls into the festival after a grueling 3-month tour, and as the legends go, they weren't exactly in the best shape. Roth in particular gives us a taste of the madness to come by delivering a loud and incoherent interview to MTV VJ Mark Goodman. According to Goodman, Roth was drunk and coked up, laughing at every joke he made, and that was just the warm-up. After making the audience wait for an excruciating 3 hours, Van Halen finally takes the stage, and that's when the real chaos unfolds. Roth, the man of the hour, starts by generously forgetting half the lyrics to the songs he's supposed to be belting out. And when he does remember, the words don't exactly roll off the tongue. In Steve Wozniak's memoir, he vividly recalls Roth practically falling down on stage, slurring words, and just generally being a rock and roll mess. The best part is yet to come. Roth decides to spice things up by throwing shade at none other than The Clash, who happened to be present at the festival. Now, The Clash were already annoyed with Van Halen due to remarks made by Eddie Van Halen to Rolling Stone questioning their musical chops. The stage was set for a clash of a different kind. The sloppy set eventually concludes in a backstage altercation, leaving Steve Wozniak with a hefty bill and millions lost. Meanwhile, Roth probably walked away ready to forget the whole chaotic episode ever happened. Number 18, Billy Joe Armstrong of Green Day at the iHeartRadio Festival, September 21st, 2012. It was the iHeartRadio Festival in Las Vegas, September 21st, 2012, where Green Day, the punk band with a penchant for chaos, took the stage. As the legends go, the trouble started when event organizers decided to cut their set short. And you know what happens when you cut a punk's set short, especially if that punk is Billy Joe Armstrong. Green Day, known for hits like Boulevard of Broken Dreams, might have reached commercial heights, but at their core, they're still rebels with a cause. So there they are, rocking out to their 1994 hit Basket Case, when a message flashes on a monitor informing Armstrong that he's got just 1 minute left. Now, radio station festivals are notorious for their overloaded schedules and short time slots, but this news awakened a righteous fury deep inside Armstrong. In response, Armstrong did what any punk with a 1 minute warning would do. He cut Basket Case short and unleashed a remarkably profane rant on the bewildered crowd. You're gonna give me fucking 1 minute? Look at that fucking sign right there. 1 minute, he bellows. I've been around since fucking 1988, and you're gonna give me 1 fucking minute? You gotta be fucking kidding me. In an assertive declaration, Armstrong makes it clear that he's not Justin Bieber and decides to show the organizers exactly what he can do with his 1 fucking minute. And what does he do? Well, he smashes his guitar, flips the bird, and storms off the stage. Rolling Stone reports that Armstrong was blackout drunk when he went on stage that night, and shortly thereafter, he checked into rehab, leaving the iHeartRadio festival with a performance they would never forget. Number 17. Carl Wilson of the Beach Boys in Sydney, Australia, March 19th, 1978. Step back to March 19th, 1978 in sunny Sydney, Australia, where the Beach Boys, known for their harmonious tunes and carefree vibes, experienced a performance that wasn't exactly fun in the sun. It's important to note that their story is a roller coaster of crazy twists and turns, from violence and incest to mental illness and even a chilling connection to mass murderer Charles Manson. So when we talk about baby Wilson brother Carl's slurry onstage performance, it's just another crazy chapter in the Beach Boys saga. Before their arrival in Australia, the California Boys had already played a couple of concerts in New Zealand, setting the stage for what was to come. The story takes us to the March 14th show in Perth, where 2 tracks, God Only Knows and Good Vibrations, captured Carl in a notably drunk state. These tracks found their way onto the Laid in Hawaii boot in 1994, but interestingly, they were mistakenly listed as Live in Sydney, February 13, 1978. The full concert, where Carl was still under the weather, unfolded on March 15th at the Perth Entertainment Centre. This performance was later booted on Surfin' Down Under by Rock Calendar Records in 1993. Curiously, the boot once again got the details wrong, crediting the show as Live in Perth, Western Australia Cricket Ground, February 14, 1978. Both the venue and date were incorrect. For a glimpse into this inebriated Beach Boys chapter, TV footage from the March 9th show at the Myer Music Bowl in Melbourne surfaced. This footage was aired on Australian TV on the 7 network on May 10, 1978. Number 16. Liam Gallagher of Oasis in France, 1997. Crossing the English Channel, we arrive in 1997, a pivotal year for Oasis, the Brit rock sensation fronted by their ever-temperamental Liam Gallagher. This was the era when Oasis was riding high on the success of their 3rd studio album, Be Here Now, released in August. As part of their European tour to promote the album, the band, no doubt, graced the stages of France with their rock anthems. The younger Gallagher brother, known for his fiery personality, who can forget the Sick episode during the Unplugged show, had a complicated relationship with both his biggest hit song and, at that point, his ex-band. So it's hardly surprising that he would turn up to a gig in a state that could be described as, well, totally trashed. And speaking of Oasis gigs, let's rewind the clock 23 years to the mammoth performance at Wembley Stadium on July 21, 2000. This gig, later immortalized in their live album Familiar to Millions, had its own share of chaos. In fact, it's often cited as the turning point for Liam Gallagher's onstage drinking habits. The live album may have hit number 5 on the UK charts, but behind the scenes, it marked a significant change for the Manchester rocker. In a 2019 interview with Radio X's Chris Moyles, Liam spilled the water on his post-Wembley sobriety. When asked if he still drank booze on stage, the rock icon confessed, "Just water, man. I've not drunk booze on stage since that famous Wembley gig. Remember that one where it all went a bit?" He went on to share, "Apparently people like that kind of thing, but now I steer clear of all that. Do you know what I mean? It's just water, man. Stuff like that. Every now and again, depending on the gig's length, I might have a little cheeky tequila just to get the party started." Number 15. The Replacements on Saturday Night Live, January 18th, 1986. Close your eyes and remember the rebellious 80s, a time when alternative rock was still referred to as college rock. Enter the Replacements, a band that not only embraced the music, but also the rebellious spirit that defined the era. Shortly after the release of their major label debut, Tim, the band made a splash on the national stage with their television debut on the January 18, 1986 episode of Saturday Night Live. But this was no ordinary SNL performance. It was a chaotic spectacle that resulted in the Replacements getting banned from the show. According to Bob Mayer's Trouble Boys, the true story of the Replacements, as reported by Rolling Stone, the band's pre-show ritual of getting wasted faced a challenge when they found themselves on SNL's dry set after the sound check. However, their resourceful sound guy managed to smuggle in a stash of booze, which the band eagerly consumed in their dressing room. Just after midnight, the intoxicated Replacements hit the stage to play Bastards of Young. What followed was a performance that showcased the DGAF, don't give a fuck attitude, that would later cement their status as rock renegades. Lead singer Paul Westerberg, seemingly detached, wandered away from his mic mid-verse, while bassist Tommy Stinson staggered around the stage, rarely staying in frame for long. Westerberg, concerned about guitarist Bob Stinson potentially missing his solo cue, shouted, "Come on, fucker," as a cue. A moment the censors missed, but the mic picked up. As the song reached its climax, Bob Stinson, seemingly unaware of his torn outfit, executed a somersault, unintentionally revealing a brief glimpse of his backside to the audience. Number 14. Ozzy Osbourne. When you think of wild, party-hardy rockers, Ozzy undoubtedly takes the cake. His life has been a roller coaster of immeasurable highs and painful lows, conquering the music world with Black Sabbath and as a solo artist. Ozzy Osbourne is, without a doubt, one of the biggest characters rock and roll has ever produced, and his journey reads like a rock and roll epic. However, with the wild ride of fame and fortune comes the darker side, and Ozzy's life has been no exception. His battles with addiction over the last half-century have led to moments that are hard to believe. One such moment, caught on tape, captures the essence of Ozzy's unpredictable nature. In this clip, the exact origin of which remains a mystery, Ozzy is performing the Black Sabbath classic War Pigs in Cincinnati, probably in the early 2000s. What makes this performance stand out is not just the music, but a surprising twist. A drunken fan decides to join Ozzy on stage, turning what was supposed to be a standard performance into an unpredictable collaboration. Together, Ozzy and the fan manage to finish the song, despite the vocals being a bit shaky, courtesy of Ozzy, of course. Number 13. Van Halen's Turbulent Reunion Tour, 2004. We're about to embark on a turbulent chapter in the saga of Van Halen, the band known for both their music and their drama. The year is 2004, during the last night of Van Halen's reunion tour with Sammy Hagar. The Red Rocker didn't mince words when he later described the experience as some of the most miserable, backstabbing dark crap I've ever been involved with. Vocalist Hagar replaced original frontman David Lee Roth in Van Halen. Despite the initial fan divide, Hagar's tenure marked one of the band's most commercially successful periods. However, tensions brewed, and Hagar found himself dismissed from the band in 1996. The saga continued when he rejoined them for a reunion tour in 2004, a decision he would soon regret. As the tour progressed, Hagar's relationship with guitarist Eddie Van Halen grew increasingly strained. Ultimate Classic Rock reports that Hagar tried to quit the tour at least once, but stayed under the threat of legal action, creating a less than ideal rocking atmosphere. The tension between Hagar and Eddie reached its climax on the final night of the tour. In an interview with journalist Sally Steele in 2012, Hagar vividly recounted the disastrous night, stating, "It was the worst show we'd ever done in our lives. Eddie played so badly." The culmination of frustration came in the middle of a song when Eddie, visibly inebriated, smashed his guitar to bits, sending shrapnel into the crowd. Tearfully shouting, "You don't understand," to the audience, he emphatically walked off the stage, effectively ending his relationship with Hagar. Reflecting on that night, Hagar revealed that he has not spoken to either of the Van Halen brothers since. Number 12. The Rolling Stones. Most likely, this clip comes from the Stones' 2002-2003 tour in support of their compilation 40 Licks. Most of the action takes place during the first 10 seconds before the music even starts. Ronnie Wood literally stumbles into the frame as Mick Jagger rattles off a bunch of city names, barely catching himself before peering into the crowd like a totally wasted deer trapped in the oncoming headlights. In fact, the Rolling Stones were not in any condition to go on tour during the 1978 US tour. In the years preceding 1978, the Rolling Stones were renowned for their powerhouse high-energy performances, which left audiences raving and shaken. The Rolling Stones, however, seemed lackluster, tired, and burned out during their 1978 US tour. When the Stones were promoting Some Girls during the 1978 US tour, Mick Jagger admitted that they were not in good shape. This should have been obvious to anyone that knows the band. As a result of the rock star lifestyle, and particularly his drug abuse, Mick Jagger was thin, run down, ragged out, and burned out. His health was not good, so he was not able to do the tour. His performances were erratic. He was missing vocal cues, sometimes singing flat, and did not have the dynamic, effortless energy that usually characterizes his live performances. Some shows were great, others were not. Rock critics observed that he did not appear to be enjoying himself, and that his heart was just not in it on many of the shows. According to Mick Jagger, because of Keith Richards' impending legal matter, the Rolling Stones were persuaded to set out on a tour that they just were not up to. Keith Richards was in much worse shape than Mick Jagger. Years of continuous heroin use had already taken an adverse effect on his playing, but during the 1978 US tour, he was actually trying to kick heroin altogether, and his playing was not as good, and in fact, when he finally got off heroin for good, his playing was never as fluent as it had been during the heavy heroin years. It's not a secret that Ron Wood has a drinking problem, but in incredible contrast, during the 1978 US tour, he was in better shape than Mick Jagger or Keith Richards. Ron Wood's guitar playing on the 1978 US tour was actually some of his best. There is no doubt that Ron Wood was drunk on many of the shows, but his playing was still pretty good. It was almost as if he recognized that Jagger and Richards were below par, and he rose to the occasion to do some of his best playing with the Rolling Stones ever. Both Charlie Watts and Bill Wyman were playing as well as ever on this tour. They are and have always been the most reliable rhythm section in rock and roll. Number 11. Kiss. It is well known that Kiss concerts have those moments when cold gin kicks in, elevating the performance to the next level. However, there's one exception to this rule, and it happens during the big ballad Beth, a time when drummer Peter Criss steps away from his kit and takes center stage. At a 1979 show, perhaps fueled by the hazy shade of booze, Peter Criss found himself in a momentary lapse of lyrical memory during Beth. The spotlight, which usually hogged his performance, suddenly became a glaring reminder of the forgotten words. It's not every day you see the Catman stumble, but that Halloween night, the spirits might have played a trick on Peter Criss, leaving him momentarily lost in the fog of intoxication. But that's not the only instance where Kiss found themselves in a spirited situation. On a Halloween night in 1979, the band made an appearance on The Tomorrow Show. However, it wasn't the elaborate costumes or the makeup that stole the spotlight, it was the visibly tipsy Ace Frehley. Video footage of the interview showcases Ace's rowdy behavior. talking over others and injecting interruptions throughout the conversation. Number 10. Grace Slick. Back in 1978, Jefferson Airplane had transformed into Jefferson Starship, and the iconic Grace Slick found herself navigating the cosmos, both musically and in spirit. Known for enjoying a cocktail or 14 without losing her composure, Slick usually held it together with ease. However, a European tour in support of the album Earth brought the band to Germany, and this decision would prove to be quite questionable. According to the band's biography, author Jeff Tamarkin noted that Slick always had a thing about Germany. All things Deutsch brought out the worst in her. It seems the stars weren't aligning for Grace on this particular night. As a warm-up, she decided to indulge in literally all the alcohol within arm's reach, throwing a monumental tantrum and steadfastly refusing to prepare for the impending show. When finally dragged on stage, she was so well lubricated that singing took a back seat to berating the locals. In a bizarre display, Grace Slick opted to mockingly ask the German audience, "Who won the war?" while liberally slinging around the four-letter N-word accompanied by salutes. Starship publicist Cynthia Bowman later described it as a horrible, empty, bad, dark night. This unforgettable episode resulted in Slick's dismissal from the band. Interestingly, she did make a return several years later, perhaps proving that sometimes you don't need alcohol to make terrible decisions. Number 9. Wes Scantlin of Puddle of Mudd. In an unforgettable episode at Headliners, a club in Toledo, Ohio, Scantlin and the band found themselves in a situation that would go down in infamy. After playing just 4 songs, all members of Puddle of Mudd, except the charismatic frontman, walked off the stage. Why? Well, Scantlin openly admitted he was too fucked to perform. Unfazed by his bandmates' departure, Scantlin remained on stage, subjecting the audience to a surreal and agonizing half hour. Staggering around, swearing profusely, insulting the crowd, dodging projectiles hurled by the increasingly hostile audience, dropping his guitar, and serenading the audience with songs that seemed to be spontaneously conjured up, according to MTV News. Finally, as a merciful conclusion, Scantlin threw in the towel and retreated to his backstage dressing room. The performance was so disastrous that it bordered on the illegal. Toledo police intervened and arrested Scantlin on a misdemeanor count of disorderly conduct. The price for this chaotic spectacle? $150 as bond. A few days later, Scantlin attempted to provide some context to the debacle, telling MTV News via Blabbermouth, "I just got a little too buzzed to play my guitar and sing at the same time. Out of playing over 400 shows in the last 4 years of my life, one of them kind of didn't go very well, and I had a bad day." Number 8. CC DeVille. One of the more respectable bands to have worked in the genre that is commonly known as hair metal was Poison. Their catchy tunes and wild stage antics earned them legions of spandex-clad, freaky-haired fans over the years. As a guitarist, CC DeVille was a guy who knew how to put on a show. Except in 1991, when he forgot everything he needed to know about performing at the MTV Video Music Awards, including his song choices, how to play his instrument, and possibly his name. Since he was a guy who liked to do lots of cocaine, he was not able to recall his name or anything else. According to the band's fan club website, the sorta performance became infamous. It started off poorly and only got worse. DeVille began playing Unskinny Bop, the song they were supposed to play during a commercial break. Toward the end of the song, after lurching through a few minutes of the song, DeVille seemed to realize he'd made a mistake and just petered out, seemingly waiting for host Arsenio Hall to give him some direction on what to do. He then launched into the ironically titled Let It Play, which he was actually not supposed to play. For some reason, lead singer Bret Michaels confused DeVille further by prompting him to play the band's other hit, Talk Dirty to Me. So DeVille played it extremely poorly, even taking several seconds to notice when his guitar came completely unplugged. Michaels played it off afterward by proclaiming, "It ain't perfect, but it's rock and roll." Then he followed DeVille backstage and fired the hell out of him. Number 7. Jim Morrison. Over the course of rock history, Morrison has earned his place on this list not just once, but multiple times. His booze-soaked stage shenanigans are well documented. Today, we unravel not one but 2 incidents that showcase Morrison's penchant for pushing the boundaries of rock and roll excess. The first tale takes us back to a fateful European tour in 1968. The Doors found themselves sharing the stage with Jefferson Airplane in Amsterdam, a combination that might have been a bit too explosive. Morrison, having indulged in copious amounts of drugs and consumed a fair share of booze, leaving some for Grace Slick, decided to make an impromptu appearance during Jefferson Airplane's set. He danced around briefly before collapsing into a heap, prompting a one-way trip to Dreamland. As Morrison was whisked away to the hospital, keyboardist Ray Manzarek heroically took over vocal duties for the rest of the set. Fast forward to a 1970 show in New Orleans, and Morrison's antics take a different turn. He struggled with lyrics, skipped entire verses, and leaned on a mic stand for support throughout the performance. Eventually, he decided to take a load off, settling on a drum riser. When drummer John Densmore attempted to rouse Morrison with a gentle prod, the Lizard King rose, grabbed the mic stand, smashed it to bits, and made a dramatic exit. Little did anyone know it marked the final chapter of Morrison's live performances with the Doors. Number 6. Gene Ween. Ween, the band that proudly wears the badge of idiosyncratic, or let's be real, just weird. The frontman, Gene Ween, also known as Aaron Freeman, has had his fair share of moments that could only be described as uniquely Ween. In 2011, during a gig in Vancouver that had 3,000 fans eagerly paying $50 per ticket, Freeman decided to take his eccentricity to new heights, or should we say, depths. When the band opened the show with an instrumental number, Freeman's behavior hinted at the unconventional evening that was about to unfold. While the rest of the band flawlessly executed every note, Freeman seemed more preoccupied with figuring out how to work a tambourine. When it was finally time for him to grace the microphone, things took a turn for the worse. Freeman sang his lyrics in a bizarre, off-kilter voice for the initial tunes, providing the audience with a performance that could only be described as out of this world. After guitarist Dean Ween, Mickey Melchiondo took over vocals for a few songs, Freeman returned to completely botch the lyrics of the next number. He then took a casual seat on stage for the following song, escalating to lying flat on his back by the one after that. In an attempt to smooth things over, Freeman sprang up to offer an apology, citing his bandmates' panties being in a bunch. However, he wasn't done yet. His attempt at covering the Alarm's classic Spirit of 76 was marred by off-key vocals, and just when you thought it couldn't get any more chaotic, Freeman decided it was time to fail spectacularly at tuning his guitar. But at this point, the rest of the band had had enough and literally left the stage. Freeman, engrossed in his guitar tuning endeavors, took a while to notice. Flubbing his way through one more tune, he eventually and somewhat forlornly asked, "Hey, where's the band?" And with that, the curtains closed on one of the most unforgettable performances in Ween's quirky history. Number 5. Johnette Napolitano. Concrete Blonde, the indie band that gifted the 90s with hits like Joey and Tomorrow Wendy, showcased the formidable vocal prowess of lead singer Johnette Napolitano. However, fans attending a solo gig in Fort Worth, Texas in 2016 got more than they bargained for. What was supposed to be an evening of powerful vocals turned into an unforgettable display of rock and roll excess. As the night began, Napolitano set the tone by unceremoniously crashing the stage during the opener's set. When it was her turn in the spotlight, she opened her set with a rendition of Joey that can only be described as, well, unforgettable. Witnesses reported that she seemed to forget how to sing or play the song, meandering through the lyrics and awkwardly pawing at her guitar. The audience, ever loyal, stepped in and sang most of the song for her. However, the awkwardness didn't end there. Halfway through the next number, Napolitano, who had been perched on a stool, decided to rise, grab the mic stand, and promptly took a spill right on stage. The curtain mercifully descended just 10 minutes after Napolitano had taken the stage, leaving her barely conscious and flat on her back. Angry fans, eager for some recompense, were told they couldn't get a refund because, technically, she had shown up. Number 4. Billy Joel. In 2002, Elton John and Billy Joel combined forces to make a piano-fueled show that was performed at Madison Square Garden in New York City in front of thousands of fans. First, they played a few songs together, but then Joel left the stage, leaving John and his backing band to grow some funk of their own. Afterwards, fans were warned to expect the piano man to not be at his best during the Joel portion of the evening, as Joel was known to have a cold, so they were not to expect the piano man to sing the likes of My Life or Just the Way You Are. But that couldn't explain Joel's behavior. Sure, he sang, but then he went off on a weird rant where he made fun of the Liberty Bell for having a crack in it, and then yelled out the names of major World War II battles. Corregidor, Midway, Guadalcanal, Joel screamed. Although Joel was clearly compromised, the music eventually continued. When he slumped forward on his bench and slurred, don't try to save me, he sounded truly hopeless, Khalifa Sena wrote in the New York Times. As he wailed, he banged on his keys almost at random. When John returned for a double piano presentation of Benny and the Jets, Joel banged on the keys nonsensically, and John visibly mouthed the words, "Thank God," at its conclusion. There is a reason why Joel entered a rehabilitation center in June 2002. Number 3. Amy Winehouse. As many are aware, Amy Winehouse had a big hit song about not wanting to go to rehab, and just as famously, she joined the notorious 27 Club after a friend, Alex Foden, also predicted that Winehouse would do so. The Telegraph reported shortly before Winehouse's death that she had infuriated fans by showing up to a gig in Belgrade, Serbia, utterly plastered, despite the fact that she had been ostensibly banned from drinking on this tour. Winehouse had infuriated fans by showing up utterly drunk to the gig soon before her demise. As the night began, she greeted the crowd with, "Hello, Athens," which is not a city in Serbia, before launching into a mumbling, incoherent set that saw her alternatively fall over, sit down, and wander off stage throughout her performance. Many of the 20,000 attendees had paid ridiculous amounts for tickets, so they weren't amused. Co-headliner Moby would later tell Today that as he was approaching the venue, he could hear the audience booing louder than the music, and that he'd arrived to find what remained of the crowd looking on in disbelief, as the band played more awkwardly than perhaps any other band in history. It would unfortunately be Winehouse's final performance, but we should always remember that she once kicked some major ass, a fact of which there is plenty of proof. Number 2. Scott Stapp of Creed at Chicago's Allstate Arena, December 29th, 2002. Do you remember that time when Creed gave such a poor performance that the entire audience sued them collectively for $2 million because of what they did to the show? Scott Stapp, the lead singer, probably does not. Due to his extreme medication, he wasn't able to perform. According to court documents, he was so intoxicated and or medicated that he was unable to sing the lyrics of a single Creed song. Instead, during the Creed concert, Stapp left the stage for long periods of time, rolled around on the floor of the stage in apparent pain or distress, and appeared to pass out while on stage. The good news is that he has since been able to clean up his act, and in his autobiography that was released in 2012, he apologizes for the incident. It may be true that Creed frontman Scott Stapp is sober these days, but looking back at his early gigs, Stapp used to look like he had fallen into a pool of booze and had to drink his way out of it. One show in Chicago in 2002 is legendary for all the wrong reasons. I think it would be fair to say that it was one of the worst performances ever given by a major band in the modern era. It was so bad that, according to MTV News, a group of fans actually filed a lawsuit against the band for cheating them out of a real show. As stated in the court filing, Stapp was intoxicated and/or medicated to the point that he was unable to sing the lyrics of any Creed song, and that he left the stage for long periods of time during some songs, appeared to be in pain or distress, and appeared to pass out while on stage. He appeared to leave the stage several times during the performance while leaving him in apparent distress or pain. The band actually carried on for the entire show, playing extended solos and generally just trying to pretend that everything was fine. Even though the lawsuit was eventually dismissed, the debacle was the beginning of Creed's downfall. As a result, the band ended up disbanding in 2004. Number 1. Keith Moon of The Who at San Francisco's Cow Palace, November 20th, 1973. While performing during this performance, Moon the Loon was not only on booze, he was also fighting with animal tranquilizers to stay upright while performing. Despite his best efforts, he passed out at the Kit 70 minutes into the set and had to be taken off stage for a nap. There was one incredibly lucky fan who emerged from this potential disaster with an amazing silver lining. In order to close out the show, guitarist Pete Townshend asked the crowd if there was anyone in the audience who was able to play drums with the band. Soon, 19-year-old Scott Halpin was pulled out of the crowd and played drums for 3 of the songs. If you're unfamiliar with The Who's legendary late drummer Keith Moon, you really only need to know 2 things. He ruled the drums, and he embodied pure debauchery. This is a man who, as related by Rolling Stone and everyone who ever knew him, drove a car into a motel swimming pool, possibly while naked, at his own birthday party. His appetite for drugs and drink was considered to be completely insane even by other rock stars, yet he could still play hours-long sets looking like a tornado made of drumsticks and sweat. That is, until a San Francisco gig in November 1973. According to Rolling Stone, Moon had popped some of what he assumed were run-of-the-mill tranquilizers to calm his nerves, chasing them with brandy, but they may instead have been tranquilizers of the horse variety. In the middle of performing Won't Get Fooled Again, Moon began to wind down like a cheap clock. There are many different interpretations of the story, but I believe that he was dragged off stage and thrown in a cold shower, or injected with cortisone depending on whom you ask, and brought back out to attempt Magic Bus, only to wind down once again and actually pass out on his kit. In a last-ditch effort to finish the show, guitarist Pete Townshend asked if anyone could play the drums, leading 19-year-old fan Scott Halpin to join his favorite band on stage for the last few songs. Halpin performed admirably, considering the insane pressure and the contact high he must have gotten just from sitting behind Moon's drum kit. That's all for now, folks. Top 20 rockers too wasted to perform. If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up, share your thoughts in the comments, and make sure to subscribe for more epic videos. Thanks for watching.